Hier ist die Translation from German to English of the Video, wie YouTube gerade seine Creator verscheucht. How YouTube is scaring away its creators. Of the German IT YouTuber Morpheus about the reduction in views across YouTube. You can find the summary on the top right or in the video description. I did my best to translate it as close as possible, and I also included the sponsorship out of respect of the original creator. You can find the original German version on the top right. My YouTube views dropped by 40% since the middle of August, and I am by far not the only one. I have looked into around 50 other German-speaking creators, and almost all of them lost an average between 10 and 50% of their views, and since pretty much the beginning of August or the middle of August, all at once. And I was just at an event and I was able to talk with a few small creators. And yes, of course, that happens every now and then when YouTube changes its algorithm. But then I was recommended this, a blog post by Jeff Geerling. So this whole thing is happening in the American sphere as well. And Linus Tech Tips even covered it in their podcast, and it was something that hadn't happened before. So it happened to an insane number of creators at once, and not just bad videos, which are actually pretty good in terms of topic and presentation, were suddenly in 10th place, while before okay videos, especially mine, that ranked 3rd or 4th in terms of topic, compared to now, everything at once, from everyone at the same time, and that makes me a bit skeptical. I am a man of data and I like to analyze. That's why I tried to actually analyze the whole thing statistically, and my girlfriend then tried to calm me down a bit and said, well, it's the summer pause. But let me say, I know the summer break. It's not that pronounced for me. On the contrary, at the Morpheus tutorials, all the computer scientists intentionally stay at home when it gets warm outside. They're staying home because it's getting warm outside. And honestly, I don't understand any other behavior. But even there, the dip is clearly visible, so what's going on? And to put the whole thing into context a bit, what does this actually mean for you? Unlike Jeff Geerling, for example, who argues in his blog post "Don't Panic," it might not be as easy as many people think. Because yes, he is not necessarily dependent on views or sponsors. That's different for me. I want to start with that right away, before we get to my passion, numbers. Thanks to this rather sudden slap from YouTube's algorithm, I have, as usual, been looking for the error in myself. My content is bad, my videos aren't interesting enough. YouTube provides us for this existential crisis with a great dashboard, saying, yeah, your last videos was really crap. Please do something different. And from years of experience, whenever I get a 10 out of 10, I get a brief bout of depression lasting a few days, from which I then have to recover to regain any motivation to do any new videos. If this happens 3 times in a row, which I've had after some algorithm changes, then the first fears about my existence really kick in, especially for smaller channels like mine. I'll get to why this might affect you in a moment. We get views, and for those views, sponsors come to this channel and they pay us not based on the effort or how much work we put into the videos, but simply based on reach. A big creator who regularly gets over 100,000 views, like I did a few months ago, actually has relatively little to worry about. Financing himself, his equipment, the far too high taxes and social security contributions in Germany, and also a cutter, or in my case, a designer and cutter combined, plus a software developer. And this is certainly a small business. If YouTube views suddenly drop by 40%, that means sponsors are suddenly only paying 60% of the revenue for the same effort. But the expenses remain the same. This is a threat to my financial existence, because I can't simply forgo 40% of my income. That simply doesn't work. Then I will have to fire someone, in best case myself. And I'm not stupid, I can certainly buffer it for a few weeks because I know YouTube. But if things stay the way they are, then it's quite possible that by this time next year I will be gone, just like most other creators. Human ones, of course. At least that was my thought. So if things don't recover here, then you can assume that YouTube will soon be nothing more than AI slop in English. YouTube Germany, especially in the medium-sized segment, is much smaller than in the US, but you probably know that. By the way, I actually already wrote a script saying that I can continue the way things are currently going. I wrote that last week, and we will see if the video comes back in some form or another. But so much for why this is relevant to you. But what's actually broken now? Did YouTube change the algorithm again? Well, very briefly, unfortunately not. Otherwise, it would probably have been recovered. You may have heard some theories, or maybe not, so let me briefly debunk them all one by one. I tested it myself and, as I said, statistically analyzed it, and I have a different theory about what's really going on here. So, a quick look at my workflow. What do I have to do for research like this? Clicking around very dubious sites, which potentially means some funny little worms, virus and bacteria. Why didn't anyone actually build bacteria for PCs? Well, whatever. To avoid this, I use Threat Protection Pro in my everyday life, which is included with our partners NordVPN, because it simply removes measurably annoying risks. I let this whole thing run in the background while I do research, and the effect is simple: less phishing, fewer fake shops, less malware advertisement, and fewer trackers. Threat Protection warns about fraudulent sites, blocks dangerous ads, and checks downloads. If a file is infected, it won't even end up on the disk. On Windows and Mac OS, it even works when I am not even connected to a VPN server. If I want, a cloud scanner also checks suspicious executable files. This saves me time, hassle, and really reduces the attack surface while I am working. If you want the same thing for yourself, go to nordvpn.com/morpheus. You can find the link in the QR code next to me, or as always in the description below. There you get a huge discount and 4 bonus months on the 2-year plan with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can test the whole thing risk-free for yourself and see if it's a good fit for you. We'll start with the most common theory, an algorithm change that happens most often and is often responsible for the drops of 3 or 4 of my videos. But something like that is usually announced by YouTube, at least via mail, and I always think to myself, oh hell no, brace yourselves, we've lost a month. But yeah, that wasn't the case here. There was no announcement, there were no hints. The official account is acting like a motivation guru with this kind of thing, and I am pretty sure there were no changes to the algorithm itself, even though the homepage is still mostly shit. Something many suspected actually was the restricted mode, of which YouTube has released a new update. The restricted mode restricts which videos you can see on your homepage. It hasn't changed in years, but there was definitely an update. If a user doesn't specify their age, YouTube estimates the viewer's age based on the interaction. It means that if you constantly watch children's content, you will be classified as a minor, and well, the restricted mode can now be automatically activated by YouTube's AI. However, this is contradicted by 2 simple things. According to YouTube, my audience is 0.1% underage, and well, that's basically the demographic it's all about. And at the same time, when I activate restricted mode, I haven't had a single video restricted since the beginning of August. Proof by contradiction, I guess. That really doesn't make any sense. Next up are shadow bans. A shadow ban is something that's happened to me about 8 times on TikTok. After that, your next few TikTok videos barely get any reach, and then you have to prove yourself. For example, because you've reported on topics that TikTok doesn't like at all. China, for example. This isn't a joke, by the way, but rather well documented. YouTube doesn't do that. There are no official statements, there are no official sources on this. I spoke to YouTube some time ago, and they simply don't have anything like shadow bans. Especially not for all creators across this entire platform on the same day. To add to that, my shorts were performing better than they have in a long time. And yeah, that's why it can't be that. Then I have also heard a few other things, like videos for members being on the homepage, or that YouTube videos were deleted and that somehow broke the YouTube algorithm, but I haven't done either of those things. And the new hype feature, which shows a certain time, like when it was launched in July, is probably not it. But you're welcome to hype my video. I'd really like to try it out and see if it works and if it achieves anything. To do this, you actually have to press the like button twice, which is quite odd. But then we come to two relatively good series. One was on the podcast of 404 Media. The source is linked below and would really make sense with this channel. AI slop. I keep seeing videos even on my homepage, for example, from a philosophy channel that are actually just a kind of illustrated podcast. No promo for the channel here because I simply don't want to support such AI channels. The images you see in the video are AI generated and I recognize the voice as the standard voice in 11 Labs. And the text definitely has some phrases that I can fairly confidentially classify as GPT-4o. There are more and more of these creators, and yes, they obviously have a huge competitive advantage, namely they simply scale indefinitely, meaning there is no limit to content, no limit to the amount of content you can produce, although there is this limit if you look closely. AI tools aren't free. Sure, they are getting cheaper, but on YouTube advertising makes surprisingly little impact, so these channels quickly realize, shit, it's not worth it. What's more complicated is why all of a sudden. So why exactly the beginning or middle of August? WO3 came out in July and mostly flooded short videos, mostly TikTok. And as I said, shorts are doing pretty well for me right now. 11 Labs has been around for a long time. AI channels have been around for quite a while too. That doesn't make sense. The second theory, which is quite good, was the summer break. But that happens every year. And as Spiffing Brit pointed out, every year creators worry about it if they haven't been on the platform for long. Linus Tech Tips, on the other hand, has been here since quite a while, and I have been here for 13 years. I know the summer break. As I said, it's never been as bad and especially as long as it is now. So what is it? Well, there we have a pretty good clue. What distinguishes short videos that perform well from long form videos? That was kind of my starting point. Where do you actually watch my videos? I personally almost always watch long form videos on TV or my desktop PC. I watch long form videos only on my phone when I'm on the train, and I almost always watch shorts on my phone. Although abusing a screen as a short video thing is pretty funny, but that was the crux of the matter. In the analytics you can see that if I only select long form videos and then choose the device, the number of you who watch on mobile and on PC is roughly the same, so almost permanently. Until recently, until around mid-August. For the videos after mid-August, where all the drops are visible, the views from only the PC dropped by about 50%. And that's even more strange. By the way, that's something I've never experienced during a summer break, and people didn't suddenly decide, hey, I don't want to be on the computer anymore, and my laptop broke too. And that happened on both my channels and all other channels too. By the way, around the same time I noticed it, YouTuber Josh Strive Hayes published a video that identified exactly the same phenomenon on 4 channels, and 7 hours ago he verified this exact drop in desktop views on over 80 channels with extremely different target groups. Statistics and numbers don't lie. The numbers of viewers via desktop PC has fallen so much that it is economically problematic. But an important thing that Linus Tech Tips was one of the first to notice. The YouTube advertising revenue hasn't dropped. How can that be? 40% fewer viewers, but the same revenue? Meaning more revenue per view? Unfortunately not via sponsorship but only via YouTube advertising, but how can that be? Josh concludes that many people were having trouble opening YouTube on their PCs because of their ad blockers, and indeed there are some posts, some YouTube error messages and even some bugs where YouTube wouldn't even load for people with ad blockers. Meanwhile, things are a bit different again. YouTube stated that they haven't changed how views are counted. Josh concludes that the views literally weren't arriving on YouTube, so people literally couldn't see the video because they were blocked. And that's exactly what I wanted to verify. So I took an unlisted video from my channel an interview with Patrick Buraya about chat control, a topic I actually wanted to cover this week. It's unlisted and there's no advertising on this video, so intentionally no advertising, but everything loads as it should on YouTube, meaning the request goes through to YouTube. The YouTube homepage loads the interview and so on. And the video had exactly 0 views in the last months before I watched it, so I always see the most recent views, and I let this view run for about 5 minutes, once with ad blocker and once without. So 2 views, both about 5 minutes long, and both in the anonymous window. As I said, there's actually no advertisement on the video from my side. I deactivated it. And see? 0 views. So my own views in the anonymous windows weren't counted, regardless of whether I used ad blocker or not. And that was actually interesting, but maybe because the video wasn't monetized. So there were no ads on the video at all. Maybe there was some kind of bug. So I chose an interview that was also unlisted, but with ads, so that no one else would accidentally click on it while I was running the test. And once with ad blocker and once without. And lo and behold, 1 view. And 10 seconds later, that very same view was gone again. And with that, an exciting observation. I tried everything to disable my own ad blocker. I've even watched the video on my phone, but anonymously in the browser using mobile data, so I wouldn't somehow block anything on my own home network. And yes, I have saw ads. So I even did the whole thing again using the YouTube app itself. And there's actually an incognito mode that I just activated here, which pretends you're incognito. Funnily enough, hardly anyone actually knows about it. And it obviously doesn't make you anonymous either. And here again, both the party comparison and the interview, after I watched the whole thing through, you can see I got ads. They had 0 views afterwards. So not 1, regardless of whether I had an ad blocker or not, regardless of whether I was using the YouTube mobile app or desktop PC. It was always 0 views. The only real difference between whether the view counted or not was, and here's the thing, whether I was logged in or not. And that explains the case with desktop views quite drastically. Of course, if you're on PC, you can log in, but you can also just go through youtube.com and use it. In the app, however, you're usually logged in. Hardly anyone ever knows about the incognito mode button in the app. I played this spiel with more than 10 videos, none of which are getting any views from me these days, and in the YouTube app I saw ads, mostly for Temu, and 3 times a view actually appeared, which was gone again within 5 minutes. In total, out of my over 30 test views, exactly 0 remained. 0 views regardless of whether I was on desktop or mobile, regardless of whether I saw ads or not. The only big difference was that I wasn't logged in. So I wanted to know the counterexample. We used AdBlock but logged in with a work account where we don't have YouTube Premium, opened YouTube and played the interview, and voila, there was the view. Not on this one, but the different one. And it still worked. I don't know why, by the way, but yeah, the view was there. And of course, not logging in is much more likely on the PC than on the app or on the TV. And that's why I'm pretty sure that's exactly the reason why the views are so broken. YouTube doesn't reliably count users who aren't logged in. Users who want to at least protect their anonymity a little are simply no views at all. This could also affect people with script blockers or ad blockers, but actually not only that. That's why I suspect that YouTube wants to exclude bots this way. Bots that simply flood videos, bots that aren't real views, because the interaction remains the same, the like rate has been the same. That's what Linus Tech Tips said too. And the amount of ads displayed has been also remained roughly the same. I can't prove it, but I have another clue. As you can see here, sometime later the views from mobile and some from desktop actually reappeared. And these other YouTube features, which you can see here a bit here, this here. It's actually that I had linked the podcast in the description and clicked on it anonymously, of course. And some anonymous view was actually counted, exactly that one. At the same time, however, the party comparison, which I watched in the exact same session, didn't receive any views, even though I saw ads there, twice in fact. So it's not the ads, but probably the bot defense. And that also explains why the real-time 60-minute views didn't count the view, and it only appeared after 2.5 hours within the last 48-hour view count. So it probably had to be checked first whether this view could have come from a real person, which presumably means that views via VPN, Tor and the like aren't counted either, which in turn explains why views on a channel like this one, which primarily deals with privacy or also with privacy, have plummeted so dramatically. And well, on other less technical channels, the whole thing less bad is. Cool! So the fact is, real human views are also lost. And that's an economic problem, because if things continue like this, more and more creators will disappear. And it's not like if the last few years haven't screwed us enough, especially with AI and unpaid but algorithm-mandated shorts and reactions that actually earn more than the original creator. It's not like as if a lot haven't already left. And now, logically, the best thing to do would be to promote your own product or Patreon, I guess. Of course, I won't say no if you want to stop by and check out the Morph Reader or my Patreon, where I provide some extras. But technically, that's not your responsibility, even if other creators or YouTube might say so. It's YouTube's responsibility. When the creators leave, the users leave too. And silence from YouTube's official site is definitely not gold here. For my part, I will at least as soon as I can turn some of my attention to my software projects again. You already know the Morph Reader as a news app. I was thinking about streaming it when I'm developing or doing pen tests, at least what I am allowed to show. So please let me know if that's something for you, or just check me out on Twitch. I will link you all below in the description, and then I will see if there is interest. Yeah, and in that sense, I hope YouTube will say something about it, and we will hear from each other the next time in the cyberspace. Bye.